All right. Thank you, everyone, for all 28 of you for being here at the AGM. This is a great turnout. It's good to see everyone here. It's been a hell of a year. As a general outline, we'll get through reports, which are fairly basic. First, we'll have a bit of a talk about what has occurred during the year and the wins and I suppose major progress come out of that. Then we'll have motions. Then we'll have committee nominations, any last minute committee nominations, and then if we can get it working, a vote. Otherwise, it will be the same process as last time where we send it out afterwards, but Miles can advise how we're going on that front when we get there. After that, we will have general business. You would have all received a discussion primer, but well, if you RSVP'd before yesterday lunchtime, you've all received a discussion primer for the strategy section, but there will be a short presentation there, and then we will have some guest speakers. Depending on timing, they may be before or after a discussion component, and then we shall finish, and hopefully we'll get it all done within about 2 hours or less. Fingers crossed, especially because we've started late, but thank you. Miles, just for the sake of clarity, can we confirm that we have sufficient members here with proxies assigned to validate quorum?
It depends on how strict you want to be. I have verified enough members that hypothetically we can assign enough proxies to validate quorum. I'm still in the process of doing that, but I'm confident we are able to start.
Excellent.
Can I have a quick call out for everyone who is willing to receive one of the nominated proxies? If you could please send me a message when I begin assigning those proxies.
And both of the people I know who have specifically assigned proxies to them already are here. So, yeah.
Yeah, to clarify, a lot of the proxies have been specifically directed to certain people, but we do have a limit on the number of proxies, and I believe some people have exceeded that. Additionally, sometimes people will specify their proxy can go to whoever's available, and so we have to sort of arbitrarily pick people on the day to take those proxies.
Yeah, all right. But as a basic one, there's definitely at least 9 actual members that we can confirm here and enough proxies, so that means we are able to confirm quorum and go on. We shall obviously get all that hashed out specifically for sections later. Thank you.
Yes, I've currently verified 16 members. The count is increasing with every second.
Excellent. All right. Well, I will begin with a short review of the past year. Obviously, this past year was an election year. It was quite a significant event. We moved a lot of money around. Not everything went entirely according to plan, but overall, we had a very strong impact. In some areas, we had even increased vote share despite the massive swings to Labour, in that climate being things which we would expect to sabotage our vote share. And we didn't particularly lose vote share in any significant capacity, and we did gain it in some places. So that was a pretty strong outcome, all things considered. By making a strong showing in terms of candidates for the second election running, we also got a great deal more attention from various NGOs, various social groups, and other parties, including, for the first time that I'm aware of, that any of us have had one of the major parties directly contact us to try and talk about preference negotiations, which is a first. So overall, it was a very significant milestone. um, Elections are stressful and exhausting times, and we all had a lot to do, and some of us took a little while to recover afterwards, myself included. So it has been a bit of a quieter year since the election, but nevertheless, we have, as a party, continued to grow with a steady trickle of new members. And obviously, from the election, our ongoing partnership with the Progressives has held, and we are in the process of working towards Victorian state registration, which, as I understand, we're fairly confident about, but Miles can talk more to that later. It was an expensive year, and we definitely need to do a bit of fundraising during the Victorian campaign, but overall, I think it was fairly solid. I would like to take this opportunity at this moment to thank Imelda, who was treasurer during this period. Imelda has stepped away. They felt that with their remoteness and their difficulty to accessing the internet that they've had and their changing job circumstances, they weren't in a position to really fit in very well. And so they have moved on, but they did very doggedly complete the responsibilities they held with AEC returns and various other responsibilities in that vein. So I want to thank Imelda as outgoing treasurer. I'd also like to thank Amanda as outgoing secretary. I think the latter half of the year after the election was a challenge for her personally in terms of time management and career. So she has elected not to renominate, but she was a essential and valuable contributor to a number of efforts during the year. So again, I would like to thank Amanda on her way out as well. I don't know if I have a lot more to say. I have been very hectically trying to keep on top of things this last week because I've been traveling and had stuff to get to here. So I think I shall move on. Miles, if you are ready to talk about campaigns.
Thanks. Can I just get a check how my audio quality is, if there's any echo there?
There's a small echo, but it's low.
It's not sounding bad to me. I think maybe they just had like multiple streams running or something.
Okay, cool. So I'm also have video coming through on a separate profile. So if anyone's confused, I think, yeah, I think you got it, Drew, there. The focus on the correct one. Okay. So my name is Miles. I'm the outgoing National Campaigns Coordinator for Fusion Party 2025. I have had an extremely busy year in a lot of ways, both personal and professional. As sort of an example of that, I've changed jobs multiple times and have changed cities multiple times and countries multiple times, and also been through a federal election, which is a very exciting time. There's a lot I could say or that I would want to say, and I guess I'd probably I'd rather keep it short at this stage and think about looking to the future. But I think that we have learned a lot and grown a lot and changed a lot over the last 18 months. And we're at the stage of maturing now as a party and as a movement. And what that means is we are on a trend towards professionalization and towards being more serious in how we approach politics and what we want to achieve. As part of that as well, I've indicated that through the election, although obviously the goals of the party are to get people elected, on a personal level, I'm interested in more. Thank you. Sorry, there's an echo there. I'm interested in broader political, social, and economic change in a number of different ways outside of elections as well as inside them. And so what that looks like can vary very wildly, but a common refrain from everyone who worked with me during the election, all of our candidates, all of our volunteers, was that we have the capability to make change whether or not we get people elected. And so don't go into this with expectations of being elected or achieving a certain vote count, but rather think about what is the message that we can put out there and what is the social change that we can by using the election as a platform to push for change. So a couple of the highlights that I want to put out there, in the previous federal election, we had a record number of candidates for both ourselves and every single one of our member parties prior to fusion. If I remember the numbers, it's something like 28 or 29. We might have actually broken 30. We also had, Drew mentioned it was a very expensive year. The bulk of that money went into candidate registration fees. And so obviously more candidates, more registration fees. The single largest outlay, which we do tend to make in one transaction, which is an enormous milestone. But we're also incredibly excited to welcome new parties to the coalition as part of the federal election, which obviously includes the Australian Progressives, where we have a huge amount of overlap, a huge amount of support. And for my part, I've campaigned alongside Ed Carroll from the Queensland branch of the Australian Progressives for a number of years, as when he's ran as an independent or as a named candidate for the Progressives, and mostly done so on a personal basis or with the support of local members. And so now moving forward, we're obviously taking this to the next stage. And so I'll talk more about this later, but the most exciting initiative, which I have been promoting and I will promote more in the upcoming 18 months, is the Victorian State Party registration campaign, which was and is only possible with the support of the Victorian branch of the Australian Progressives. So I'm incredibly excited to welcome all of them into the movement. Now, ordinarily, I'd love to take questions or talk for another 2 hours, but I should probably yield the floor so we can move on to the exciting things coming up next in the AGM.
Thank you, Miles. On the matter of the financial statements, due to Imelda's departure, we don't have a full printed financial statement available. We will provide that in due course. We will circulate that to all attendees, but we can report that at the end of the financial year, the account balance was $3,067. And that has been sufficient to cover the important expenses in this period so far. We've had some technical difficulties with the finance software, which I only found out about yesterday. But yes, we have enough to keep going, and we have had since then, and we will be circulating a proper financial report as soon as we can work out how to produce it again. Michael Morosky, who was previous treasurer, has started looking into it today, but yeah, we didn't know it was a problem until today, so working that out. It will be circulated. All right. I need to find the link to those minutes. Hang on. One moment, please. Right. Many people will probably have had this link from somewhere, but I will provide the link in the chat to the minutes from last year. If anyone who was here at the AGM last year would like to take a minute to review those minutes and just check that everything looks okay, please do so. If anyone is aware of any issues with those minutes and has looked at them beforehand, please speak up and we shall make any corrections that we need to make before we can motion to approve those.
Oh yeah, sorry. Did you need someone? I second the motion if you need to.
Thank you, Owen. I think I will note that this format copied from another minutes format that we had. I don't think Owen was the owner of the floor motions last AGM. Were you, Owen?
I can't remember. Sorry.
I seem to recall you were, but I could be wrong.
All right, we can leave that. That's all right then.
It's not a floor motion. It's a declared motion, so I don't think you really need it seconded like on the floor.
Yeah. I do believe you'd be correct there. We did have a request here to use LibreOffice. I'm not sure that we have the capacity to accommodate that.
Use LibreOffice for what exactly?
For minutes, I guess.
Oh, yeah, no. I mean, I love the idea of an open office type thing, which is what LibreOffice was. But at the same time, I recognize that you don't get the versatility and collaboration from those free platforms that you can from out of the box proprietary solutions. So I'll bite that one.
Question here. Are we voting? And if so, how do we vote?
I think we're just doing it inline in the Zoom chat because this is the place where everyone has assembled on. And yeah, we don't have, there was no Discord voting channel or anything declared. So it makes the most sense that we just stay here and do everything inline. Or is that going to complicate things?
Okay, can I confirm, sorry, Drew, that you're chairing and that you're running the vote?
At the moment, yes. I was just looking at whether or not we can do a poll, but I don't think we can. Because I don't think it'll tell us who voted for what. Maybe? I don't know. We can try. Otherwise, we'll just do it in the chat as we have in the past. But I will just attempt to open this now and see what we get.
I had a pop up on my screen asking me to vote. No, sorry, saying that a poll had been started, but I can't vote. All I can do is end the poll.
Oh, I could vote fine. Maybe there's a different window for you.
Oh, right. You need a proxy
no
to vote
issues
for
of
you
voting
now.
for me.
Yeah, I think this must be because I'm an admin. I can't respond to the poll.
All right.
Okay. It also doesn't look like it allows us to confirm who was involved. So, all right, we'll just open the vote in the chat as we have done in the past. Thank you for bearing with us while we test new features.
Back in Discord or?
No, in the chat in here.
Inline chat, okay.
please yay or nay in the chat. Apologies for that. All right, Miles,
So
what do you think?
yeah, that passes. I'm just looking through the proxies. So just for those who might not have possibly checked their messages, Bryony Edwards, you have 5 proxies assigned to you. Actually, for general transparency too, Bryony has 5 proxies. Drew has 5 proxies. Cami Cordner Hunt has 5 proxies. I have 5 proxies. Owen has 5 proxies. Simon Niesel has 1 proxy. Matthew McMillan has 1 proxy, and Dave Kennedy has 1 proxy. A nice little side note I'll make here is that a number of us who have 5 proxies, actually most of us who have 5 proxies, received at least 10 or 15 nominations for proxies each. But due to a quirk in the Constitution, we can only vote with 5 of them. So what that says is that there's a small number of very high profile people in the party who have a lot of attention and support, which is great. But we really do want to encourage, we've all been active in this for a few years, and we really want to encourage more people to step forward and feel empowered to take up leadership roles in the party.
Thank you. All right, so voting on that first motion has carried. Now, acknowledging that the statement of accounts for the end of July 2025 is thin at the moment, but that we will circulate that to all AGM attendees. Are we willing to proceed with a vote on that motion?
Sure, let's do it.
Yes, Ethan, if you can make note in the meeting minutes that we do need to identify all RSVPs and make sure this gets circulated within, I think, 28 days is the requirement. All right, if anybody raises issue with the statement of accounts at the when it gets circulated, that will re-trigger a new acceptance vote. So thank you all. All right. Thank you for bearing with us on that stuff. The meaty motions for this meeting today are the proposed changes to the Constitution. The first change was a result of the challenges that we encountered with communication during the federal election. So previously, the basis was that branches either selected the preferences for their candidates or delegated that to their candidates. This was fine, but as we got more people, it meant that when we were trying to have a conversation with, say, another party who wanted to talk to us about preferences, it became a very difficult process to work through things because candidates were, to some degree, acting without visibility of the executive. And so this motion came about to basically say, can we have some sort of way of saying, look, this is the guideline. You can still, want to place your own preferences, but please come to us if you want to do something outside of the guideline so that we are proactively told about what's happening rather than having to chase things up after the fact and not knowing what's going on. Hopefully, everyone who is invested has had the chance to have a look at the changes being proposed. They are predominantly fairly minor, other than the main bit in here. Some of it includes some formatting fixes, actually. So it's mostly down this section, which basically said the guideline has these requirements.
Changes or no, I think just the floor to questions.
You have broken up there.
He's a robot.
Yeah, no, let's do the vote.
If anyone has any questions, please raise them. Otherwise, we will open voting on motion 3.
So should we look to propose future to chat?
I didn't process any of that. Miles, you
Can you hear me?
We didn't get that in the right channel, or did we? Miles? Or
Okay, how now?
you just came in really choppy there. Couldn't make out a single word.
so there's been a few questions. Ethan, would you like to, since the guideline that we're planning on working with was out of your mind, would you like to speak on the matter?
Yeah. So the guidelines are not like prescriptive. Basically what Alex said. It's a bracket into a couple different buckets. My proposal was 3 buckets, which was green, orange, and red. So green is parties that are closely aligned with us on policy and procedure. Orange is some policy alignment but procedurally disconnected or something similar to that. And then red is pretty much fundamentally opposed. And in our changes, we've put through 2 to 5 buckets, so there could be more or less specificity in that case. The reason for that is to have a consistent order within the buckets. sorry, there's not a specific order within the buckets, but each bucket is free to preference within that bucket. So for example, if there was 3 parties in the green bucket, you can preference those green parties in any order that you want, but you can't put a bucket that's a party from the orange bucket into your green preferences.
At least not without asking first.
Yeah, not at least with not asking, and I'm not sure if that was in the changes, but if you were to like wanting to change a bucket for a party, you'd be limited to 1 bucket. So if you wanted to bump someone that was in green down to orange, you'd have to seek approval for it, but you wouldn't be able to put them into red. You'd only be able to put them down to orange. And if it was a red party, you would be able to put them up to green. It's just to keep consistency. It's not to say that everyone needs to do the exact same preferences in the exact same order, because there might be local differences or anything like that. But just as a general guideline, you know, at the end of the day, we do have policy overlaps with certain parties. So that's why you would have that consistency.
Thank you, Ethan. And this, in addition to the information communication problem, also arose simply because we found that people in this last election were much less willing to care about local justifications for particular changes. We got all sorts of flack for oddities that made very little difference in the scheme of things in a lot of cases, but were nevertheless very controversial. And some of them were because one candidate had a good relationship with another person who they thought was a good example of something, and then they were just like, it didn't matter. They could not justify that to people. No one cared. So this structure meant that we should hopefully not be surprised by those sorts of things anymore going forwards.
Just to clarify,
To expand on your point, nobody cared about the explanation. They definitely cared about the yeah, like
Yes.
you know, someone preferences Liberal second, and like, oh, you know, Fusion Party's terrible. Yeah, I strongly support the changes, by the way.
All right. Open voting on motion 3.
Yeah. John August here. Just thought I'd say,
David Kennedy, I support the sentiment there.
Yes, indeed. Is that everyone who is planning to? It looks about right. That looks to be unanimous to me. So 1 abstain. That's okay. Thank you, Annie.
Can I jump in here for a quick procedural thing?
Yes.
There's 2 people I've been unable to verify, and they haven't responded to a DM yet. One is Ed, and the other is Hal. If you guys could send me a DM with the membership email you used to sign up for the party or your branch party, then I'll be able to verify your membership. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you all. That definitely carries. That's overwhelming with a couple of abstentions noted. Thank you. The other motion that we have for changes was to change the nature of the registered officer to come into effect next AGM, so a year from now, because we don't want to mess with things during the same election process. It's very messy. The essential crux of this was to change the registered officer down the line from being a elected position to being an appointed position. This is partly because it's actually very difficult to change elected positions in Fusion, and sometimes it is possible for someone to be incapacitated or occupied at the time when the AEC requires potentially quite urgent action to be taken through the registered officer. And so it was felt that the registered officer, particularly because they need to be able to respond fairly quickly to the AEC in some cases, or at the very least need to be able to tell us about communications from the AEC at the very least, that at some point in the future, it would be appropriate to make that an appointed role, so that if someone becomes incapacitated, we can, or unavailable for whatever reason, we can quickly address that matter and get things sorted out and get the line of communication to the AEC open nice and clearly again. This has no bearing on the election today for RO. Again, that's for next year down the line. It is worth noting that I think we are possibly the only registered party at the moment that has an elected RO. I looked through most of them, at least. And I believe the Pirates have previously had an elected RO and then later changed that because it was challenging for them. So that's a summary of the changes. If anyone would like to comment or yes, the RO will stay on the executive. They will still be an executive position. They just won't be elected for a year from now.
And Andrea actually raises a very important point there, because if the RO is an appointed position but can still vote, then essentially it's a way to game the system to gain additional vote on the executive if there is a breakdown of functionality. So for appointed positions, strictly speaking, it should be a non-voting position on the executive for ideal sort of governance.
Okay, well, at the moment, it would be a voting position by these changes. Yes, Alex, if you'd like to comment.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. Hopefully you can hear me without too much background noise, of which there is much. So in the Pirates, what we found was, the RO was very busy once every 3 years, as we all know, and they were functionally just another general member the rest of the time. So what we did was we turned them into just another councillor, and we combined the RO position with the secretary, because functionally the secretary has to do a lot of talking to the AEC most of the time anyway. So what we didn't do was make it a separate appointed position ad hoc. I would support a change where you could designate any exec member, preferably a general member, as RO, but that wouldn't be why they were on exec necessarily. They might have gone onto exec some other way. I don't know if that makes sense.
Seems a fairly reasonable commentary. This change was proposed very last second before the cutoff for motions. If we would like, if we want to do a different one, we can definitely prepare that for a an SGM. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on the matter of this particular topic?
Drew, it's Therese here. Can you
Hi,
hear me?
Therese. Yep, we
Hi.
can hear you.
Just as a kind of practical solution, if the registered officer is already an office bearer, they can vote, but if they're appointed and not an office bearer, then they don't get a vote, to keep the options open, if that makes sense. So if it is the secretary who's the registered officer, they get to vote. And if they're appointed from elsewhere in the membership, they don't get to vote, kind of thing. So I guess the voting doesn't sit with the position of registered officer, but sits with the whether or not they're a member of the executive or not. Anyway, just a thought.
Yeah, that could work. We also at this point during this year established a secondary committee, which we've called the directorate, which is the executive plus any appointed leadership roles for general business. And so that would be the committee that votes on most things, but then obviously the executive committee is the committee that actually has the exclusive votes for appointing or unappointing people. So would you think it would be reasonable if they were an appointed person to be a voting member of the second committee?
To me, that sounds reasonable, but yeah, I'd be interested in what other people have to say.
All right. Thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts is we're struggling between well, I guess the legal and ethical requirements to do things properly versus the ability of our volunteers to contribute time and commit in the long term to getting things done. So yeah, ideally, obviously, the returning officer, just like the DRC, should never be current office bearers in other areas because it could be seen as a conflict of interest. But at the same time, with a party as small as ours, it seems kind of prohibitive, and certainly, well, I can only speak to my experience, but often returning officers are just regular office bearers that maybe haven't taken a specific senior position for the last year, and so they'll just be brought back for that role. But yeah, I think loosening up as much as possible while still trying to maintain a semblance of proper procedure. But I'm just defining the question again, aren't I? Sorry.
I think the simplest way forward is just to change if possible, to change the existing motion on the floor to specify it's a non-voting position. Some of the issues we've had in the past are, this happened actually in the Pirates as well, from memory. Someone's been elected to a position, has been very enthusiastic, and then has disappeared a few weeks or a month later. And that's a critical failure of operations at an extremely serious level. Other similar issues that have happened include where someone has been elected to the role and they've been very enthusiastic and they've stayed present and active, but have later found that they aren't able to keep up with the role for whatever reason, but would have had to go to a full AGM in order to actually get them replaced. But in the meantime, we've got critical party operations which are non-functional.
Yes, well put.
Take a step back. They don't always explicitly tell us that they're taking a step back.
Well, I mean, speaking from personal experience, I won't go into details, but with my health issues over recent years, I had to pull back, and there were times where I think I clear missed a couple of months of meetings for anything I was supposed to be doing. But the truth is, I was holed up in hospital at the time, and I really was not in a physical position to call anyone. So.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah,
There's lots of reasons. All we're doing here is trying to plan for those eventualities. So regardless of the reasons why somebody is unavailable or has taken a step back, that there's somebody that we can throw it onto. A backup, a deputy, whatever you want to call it.
Andrea, did you want to say something?
I know that's been answered by Fusion Party hosts in the chat, but just want to say, yeah, that is the case may be that the registered officer is sometimes unable to do what they need to do within a short time frame. I still remain to be convinced about having an appointed position and not an elected person have a vote on the executive. That's all.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement with you there. It's as an appointed position, it shouldn't have a vote.
All right. Well, we need to vote on the motion in some capacity. If the motion fails, we can pass around a query to everyone who's in attendance here and ask for feedback to work on what people think should be the case going forwards. And if we get a new motion out of that, we can either hold an SGM or we can have another motion next AGM, depending on how long this takes. So is that process something that we think is all right? Yep.
Might as well put it.
All right. Well, we do have to do the vote still formally, and we'll clean this up. So
can we clarify whether so this role can overlap with other roles, right?
Yeah, I think I may have added to that confusion, but yeah, I think it can.
Legally, there's nothing preventing it from doing so. At the moment, constitutionally, it can't.
Right. So if hypothetically we were to appoint an existing voting member to be the RO, that would get around the issue of having an appointed executive member with voting rights.
Yes. It sounds like we're going to be revisiting this one in the future.
Is there a slide for this vote? I'm still seeing the HTV one.
Have we started the vote yet?
No, I just swapped back to the presentation screen. Is your Zoom screen not refreshing, Rani? Actually, can everyone see the current motions slide?
I can. It's set to a landscape format, but and it's also doesn't seem to fit into some device modes. But that's all right.
Oh, it's just that I'm seeing the HTV one. I thought we'd moved on to.
I think your screen might have frozen, Bryony.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Right.
Might need
no,
to
I see the HTV as well.
Yeah, that's what's coming through on the Zoom. Is still the HTV screen.
That's interesting. I see a slide of motions 3 and 4, fusion slides.
Yeah, I see the motions as
well.
well.
Sorry, the registered officer below. My bad. Sorry.
Okay. All right. We shall open the voting to resolve this formally, procedurally.
I feel pretty conflicted about this.
If you have issues with this, remember that's probably either a no or an abstain.
I mean, I had front row seats to most of the times when this, the returning officer, there was incidents in the past, and each of those times there was quite a bit of panic, as I recall, as we tried to resolve those issues.
What's going on here?
If I'm reading this correctly, either the nays or the abstentions have made this vote unsuccessful.
The do we have quorum rules for a vote? I'm not sure that we do. Because an abstention will still count towards quorum.
Does it
Yes,
help
so-
the abstainers and the naysayers if they understand that the RO can be changed at any time? And that's
only if the current RO retires voluntarily.
Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, there's a whole process of having to get the council or the executive committee to overthrow it, and that takes time. And in the meantime, effectively, those functions just fall flat and they can't work, and that's the concern.
Yeah, and if, for example, the RO currently, I don't know, ends up in hospital or steps away or is incapacitated and cannot respond, and we don't know what's happened, it's a minimum of 3 normal executive committee meetings that have to be skipped before the executive committee can action. So at the moment, that's an 8-week period. So yeah, it's a bit, according to the rules, it's a bit messy at the moment. So, and Miles,
sorry, are you talking about fusion rules or AEC rules?
Fusion rules.
Yeah. Well, AEC rules would not constrain us in any way from doing what number 4 says.
Yeah, no, AEC don't care.
Yeah.
This is just for our own internal procedures.
So I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7,
I
8.
count the nays as having a slender majority, a majority of 1.
All right.
I'm very on the fence on this one, to be honest, but yeah, that's hence I abstained.
Also, by my count, about 10 people haven't voted yet.
If you would like to have a say and haven't already, please do so. Otherwise, I'll close the voting in a moment. And I think, strictly speaking, the ayes have to have more than 50% of the total, including abstains.
Ed, is that a vote in favor or against? Because I don't think that's a legal vote.
Okay, there are sufficient nays and abstains that this vote cannot pass on the floor at present. So we shall circulate a discussion email afterwards about what to repropose as an adjustment going forwards, and we shall revisit that at the next opportunity. Thank you, everyone. That was interesting. All right. Thank you for bearing with us there. Miles, did we end up having the ability to run secret ballots in the meeting?
I wasn't able to set it up, no.
Okay.
Not in a way that's verifiable. Either we have an RO that can see the votes, or we make the votes public, one or the other.
I see. Could we do, are we able to appoint volunteer scrutineers to see those votes on the fly, or is that capacity not one that we have at the end now?
Constitutionally, actually, I don't know. Does anyone want to volunteer? Do we have a returning officer appointed?
We don't have a returning officer appointed at the moment. Traditionally, that has been, or sorry, originally that was going to be Dr. Liam. However, he is having surgery today.
Right.
In fact, I think he's in theatre now. So.
Do we have any volunteers who'd like to be returning officer who don't intend to nominate to any electable positions?
And who have been members for at least a year?
I think we can grandfather in the progressives. I think that's probably fair and expected.
I'll do it, yeah.
Was Owen, were you volunteering?
Yeah.
Okay, so a potential process we could use here is if everyone, for a vote, everyone sends you either by email or by direct message their votes, and then you just count them and declare the results.
Okay, sure thing.
Okay, is that acceptable for everyone?
Yeah, probably just want to put something in the chat for minutes, I guess. Oh, no, sorry, that's being done separately.
Okay.
Of course.
Owen, do you prefer a direct message or an email to do it?
I'll have an email. I'll post it in chat, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
That sounds
just
good then.
for clarity, because we didn't have a designated RO in the event of our RO having a rescheduled personal event, can we please have a quick vote to accept Owen as returning officer? This one's in the chat, and then we'll proceed if that's good. All right, that looks quite conclusive. Okay, so since we don't have the a system doing this, but we do have this capacity, Owen, please note that we will need to have a tally afterwards of where the votes all went. And then for the record, in every situation where there is a vote on a nominated position, there is always the option of seek further candidates. If you are voting on a position, please, yeah, be aware of that. So it's either one for a person or one for seek further candidates. If there are currently no contested nominations unless someone nominates in the last minute for something. But if there are multiple nominations, it's ordered, so number them 1, 2, 3, etc. With one of the options being seek further candidates when you send that to Owen.
Drew, can we just confirm that we are calling for any final nominations for the executive, and can we put a link to the form in the chat as well?
Yes, I'm about to do that. I was just explaining the process. Oh, that's not a button I was trying to press. My apologies. So yes, Mandrake, yes, we've got a hand up.
Yeah, I was just letting you know that I have put my DRC recontinuation nomination into the list as in like just during this meeting. So just letting you know in case you need to repass. So I am putting my nomination to continue front of if that automatic continuation onto the list hasn't happened because it's past deadline. So
yeah, thank you for that. We have for the DRC, we have assumed continuing positions unless otherwise informed,
which makes sense.
Dr. Liam has informed us that he is not continuing, so that is one position that is available. But I was under the impression that you were, so we've assumed that going forwards here. So
okay.
So at the moment there is a nomination for president. There is no current nomination for convener officially. There is one nomination for secretary. We have David, who has volunteered as a backup option for treasurer, in which case he and I would share some responsibilities as David hasn't got the capacity to do it fully. I believe Miles is renominating for national campaigns coordinator.
Yes, I'll put it on the website now.
And Cami is renominating for registered officer. If there are any nominations from the floor, particularly for convener, please, this is the last minute call, please speak up.
David here. I was going to say if there's that spare position on the DRC, I could do that, but if there's a possibility I might have to step into like an office position as deputy treasurer, then I guess that's not possible.
That would be correct, yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll just shut up now. Thanks.
Hi, Drew. It's Therese here again.
Hi, Therese.
Happy to put up my hand to be considered for convener.
Awesome. I am very glad to hear that. I did, for the audience's awareness, I did suggest this to Therese before, but we hadn't confirmed. So thank you very much for that nomination, Therese. It will be good to work with you.
Yeah, likewise.
All right. Are there any other last minute nominations? Sounds like that's probably a no. For the case of the DRC, there are a couple of positions open. We can, to address the question in the chat, we can appoint deputies for any position so long as the exec and the person who they're deputizing is willing to do that. So we can absolutely do deputizing, we just don't elect deputies. I've lost track of what I was talking about. The DRC, for the record, is the Dispute Resolution Committee. This is a 5-person committee, in theory, that is responsible for handling complaints and conflicts between members. If the relevant branch party doesn't have a conflict resolution process of its own. So like, for example, the pirates have a DRC of their own, so a dispute between two pirate members could be resolved by them, but if it was anyone between branches or say two science members, science doesn't have an active dispute resolution process, then it goes to the DRC. In the past couple years, there have only been a couple of minor occurrences, one of which was retracted and one of which just involved having a educational conversation with a member who was getting themselves into some trouble. So while it does require some clear-headed understanding of rules and fairness, it's not a overly demanding role. It's more about having someone who's got the capacity to sit down should something arise. It's explicitly required that someone on the DRC cannot hold any other position within the party. If anybody feels like they're good at conflict resolution and would like to join the DRC, this would be great, because we only have 3 at the moment out of 5. Otherwise, Owen, can you repost your email? And I will just put together a short thing in the chat for everyone. Please bear with me.
At this stage, it's still uncontested. So unless there's a contested nomination, there won't actually be any votes. Mandrake, sorry, did you want to say something?
I was just doing a quick double check in relationship to who the members of the DRC are. So far, myself, Andrew Downing, and if I'm right, Jeff. Please, Jeff, can you please let me contact me on Discord just to make sure and confirm that you're actually on the mailing list or on the discussion board, so I don't have to forward any of our internal chats over email to you. Just to let you know, I don't mean that in a rude way. Just as I said, there's message me your Discord handle or something, unless there is a way you want me to contact you preferably. That's all.
Things broke down there somewhere. Thank you for that, Mandrake. Also, I was muted and forgot to say something. Therese, so all of the nominees have their bios on the website or have previously had their bios on past nominations ones. I think Miles is updating his now. But Therese, would you like to introduce yourself to everyone here?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Drew. Yep, I'm Therese Faulkner. I've been the president of the Australian Progressives, and prior to that was a member of Australian Progressives and have campaigned and run for election a few times now at federal and local level. I live in Canberra. And I've been away for the last 6 months living in the UK, so that's why I've been a bit tardy with sending in nominations, etc. Because I was on a plane coming back and a bit jet lagged at the moment. But I have to say, living for the last 6 months in the UK has been quite an eye opener politically as well. So I've got a bit of a renewed passion to really contribute to what's going on in Australia and looking at those cautionary tales that we see in both US, UK and elsewhere. Professionally, I've worked in the international development sector for a long time. So I've worked in government for a very long time. And then when I left government, I've been working in the private sector, doing some contracting work in the international space, mainly working in Asia Pacific. But yeah, I've got a big passion to, I guess, make a difference in the world, drawing on my own experiences and what I see around our world, and all of my values align beautifully with what I see with Fusion. And I guess on a personal note, yeah, married, 3 kids, 2 stepkids, 3 grandkids. So been around the block a few times. Anyway, I'm very excited to be working with Fusion and bringing, I guess, some of the strengths and people from the Australian Progressives to work hand in hand with the rest of you.
Thank you. I haven't tested it.
I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yep. All right. Thank you for that, Therese. We've put the template in the chat there for people to send to Owen as returning officer with their votes. If anyone has any questions for Therese while we wait for people to do that, please feel free.
Hey, Therese, just curiously, can you tell us about these elections we previously contested?
Yeah, happy to. So for the Australian Progressives, I stood as a candidate in the 2019 federal election, and so stood as a candidate in the lower house in the new seat of Bean in the ACT. So ran a good campaign. Ended up, I guess it's a fairly busy space here, so I didn't get my 5% of the vote, unfortunately. But I think got a lot of positive feedback, a lot of good press in the region, etc., etc. There was another independent running at the time, which took a lot of oxygen, I reckon. So he had some big money behind him, and we didn't have a lot. So yeah, money talks, unfortunately. But anyway, that was a good first experience. Then in 2020, I contested the ACT local government elections. So the Progressives ran 7 candidates that year, and we made quite a dent. So in the electorate that I ran in, we did get our money back. So we got a good proportion of the vote here, and got a lot of very positive press and positive feedback. So that was encouraging. But I remember early in this meeting, I heard there was some issues about candidates for Fusion in the last federal election. We had issues with our candidates in the ACT with a little bit of bad behaviour, I reckon, just sort of quietly. but yeah, it was kind of hard work, but learned a lot of lessons on how to, which is actually why I voted a yay for the your bucketing of preferencing of approach. I thought that was quite good. And then in the 20, I can't remember, I'm getting all my years mixed up now, 2022 federal election, we just ran candidates in the Senate. So wanting to keep the progressives alive through that process. So I stood as a Senate candidate in the ACT, which of course was, we were up against the wonderful David Pocock, who I got to know quite well. So David Pocock ended up getting that second Senate seat, took it away from the Liberal Party here in Canberra. But again, that was a great experience and got to speak at a lot of forums. And again, something that I think was mentioned earlier in this meeting, I think even by putting your policies out there and being vocal and having debates and having conversations, if other parties or other independents take your policies and use them, which is something that we experienced, that's actually not a bad result that you are influencing, even if you're not getting elected into Parliament.
Yeah, I completely agree with that sentiment. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Hopefully, and there was apologies for the minor upset. We missed the secretary off the ballot to start with, but hopefully everyone has been able to do that, and we will let Owen count things for a moment. While those votes are coming in and Owen is counting, we are so behind time, but thank you all for bearing with. So, where are we? In the interest of keeping things moving, while those votes get sent through, I would like to progress to the next section. So firstly, are there any floor motions that people have been sitting on that they feel are important to raise at the moment in this AGM? Feel free to just use a thumbs down.
Oh, well, just one thing to clarify personally, Drew. Looks like I'm the only one listed under treasurer here. So is that something that I'll have to head up myself, or is I assume you'll still be helping me out as president?
Yes. There's a couple of very specific things that I can't really do, but overall, we've mostly made it. We've built in a lot of redundancy now.
All right, that's right. You can talk me through that at a later stage. I'm happy to just access accounts and put together simple reports and things like that. So,
yeah,
but yeah,
I'm
definitely no accountant, as I've said.
Yeah, Andrea, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, if anyone's got any pressing business, please go ahead of me, but just to comment on the committee elections, that it was just my understanding or my reading of the Constitution that the seek further candidates option is only required by the Constitution for running in elections, not internal elections, but government elections. And the seek further candidates, we've done it as a convention. I just wanted to mention that because that's my reading of the Constitution. And of course, the committee can run, even if I am right about that, the committee can run its party elections as it wishes.
Yes, I think you raised that last year and we looked into it. There's a potential grey zone where one section of the Constitution implies that it's required for everything, even though it's not specified under the specific committee election processes. So for the sake of having complete complete safety on the rules point, we have elected to say that we need to keep that in for the moment.
All right, thanks for that.
Yeah. Adrian?
Yes. Hi. I was just sorry. In terms of the strategy, is this also discussed and we're discussing the claim? I have one that's more SA focused, and potentially what I've been doing in the background a bit, I haven't discussed this, is I've spoken with the Libertarian Party, or the former Liberal Democrats, of their treasurer, and what I've discussed with them is that they've been having trouble with registering their party due to their change name for the state election next year. And they were actually willing to join up with us as a sort of combining our vote share.
Now that is interesting.
Yeah, lots of fusion people hate the the libertarians.
It's
They're a bunch of fucking dropkicks.
It's, I think a lot of us, it's because we both, I think I know as pirate, we're both like more freedom. It's just our question is, what defines freedom? To a degree, we both want the government to step away, but there are a lot of them are like, any size government is other than, you know, you want the smallest government because that's transparent enough to see through. You don't want the bureaucracy, and there's probably some that like privatize everyone. Others are like, no, what you need is to know how it's working, what it's working, because at times, let's be honest, you do need, you can't just say, let the government, let the corporations decide. A lot of them feel the market will do everything. And it's like, at sometimes there's a difference between what the market would want and it is working it out, and what is probably a better option for a lot of our things, let's say the environmentalist side of view, well, the incentives aren't aligned. So our idea being is, so we might talk about, yes, we want to work with, yeah, we understand them. We both want the same essential thing of, we want people to actually do what they like, do what they want, but also there's probably other internal things like, I believe I know Lionhelm did years ago, the whole, oh yeah, the Martin Place shootings, that was done
Can I jump in here, please?
Sorry,
Mandrick?
that's an
We're
old one.
heavily over time. Can I suggest we park this proposal and move on to the speakers?
Yeah, good idea.
Yes. Just I was just throwing it out there, sort of possibility and what's going on in the background a bit.
And I understand. Thanks, Adrian.
No problem.
Sorry for waffling on.
For also some context, the SA branch of the Libertarian Party has the distinction of being comparatively reasonable. But as Ethan correctly notes in the chat, the association, especially with the interstate groups, has, some substantial hazards associated with it. Yes, SA, as in South Australia, not SA.
Sorry, just quickly, can I jump in? Keep in mind, this is public, and I should say, like, many of us have like positive relations with like individual libertarians. So yeah, especially on a public forum, can we not like bash them?
Yeah. But we did get a lot of flack in the public sphere for some of the some of the relationships we did have with individual libertarians in the past. It's a difficult one.
I suppose possibly what we could do is, if in the event we do it for SA specifically, is a sort of case by case issue, if that makes sense.
Well, I think at the moment we will have to park this because yes, as Miles noted, we have some speakers.
Okay, I see.
Miles, do we want to go directly to guest speakers and then revisit this afterwards, or do we want to, or shall I go through the short presentation on this and then move on to guest speakers?
Yeah, like up to you as chair. But like it would be, you did announce your branding restructure, and so it is technically in the announced business.
All right. Let's say I will quickly go through that and then we shall do speakers. I know Tyrone's been waiting here patiently and I need to message someone briefly. Owen, let me know when you've got all the votes collated and we'll process that. 1 second, bear with me. Oh. Of course, now I can't find the right tab.
Murphy, he's at it again.
Murphy, indeed. Come on, do the thing. My computer struggling at the moment. All right, where are we again? So this was a strategy proposal that I did email around to all RSVPs yesterday. Obviously, I believe there's a handful of people who have RSVP'd since then, and I haven't had the opportunity to forward it to you. The proposal we will forward again after this to make sure everyone did get it, and it will go online. So as a bit of context, obviously we've been at this a little while, and with the last few passing elections, major parties have become less and less competent. We've all been criticizing them for their lack of action and their lack of engagement. This is nothing new. In the last 8 months in particular, we have seen a very dramatic rise in authoritarian sentiment, and we've seen this with One Nation's polling rising from 8% to 10% and now to 14% in the last month or so. And for those of us who live online as people that have to politically commentate from time to time, we noticed that there is now increasingly loud voices that want to get rid of our voting system and replace it with first past the post, or just get rid of it entirely. And the unfortunate reality is that with the economic conditions and the increasing cost of living, this is a classic situation. This is all very predictable. As to how this strategy came about, so, for some of us, this is not a surprise. Personally, I've been interested in how these things go poorly for about 20 years. A ways back, I was invested in how to actually build a movement that was able to resist a whole bunch of issues that most political parties fall into, and that was ultimately helpful for when we came to form Fusion. And since Fusion actually came together, or got close to coming together at least, the thing that's been sitting in the back of my mind is how we actually counter the rise of authoritarian popularism, which look, it keeps going. As a progressive movement, progressives don't have a very good track record of doing so. If you look at history where authoritarianism has risen under strained economic conditions, progressive movements have almost universally used the same playbook, and they've almost universally failed. I don't pretend to have all the answers on why that is, but the evidence is very clear that we can't just bring the same message we've always brought, because it doesn't get through to people when they are stressed and under strain. What we have, the information, what has been shown in fairly recent political analysis and including brain studies, interestingly, is that when people are under strain conditions, it's more about feelings, it's more about vibes. It's not about specifics, particularly because these movements tend to capture people who are only engaging in politics for the first or second time in their lives. And so simple explanations work when they don't have any real invested understanding in what they're looking at. Having been thinking about this for a long time, I was chatting to Matthew McMillan, who's also here in the chat the other week, and he said something that I think put the picture together for me. So, and I've sort of covered some of this, but ultimately, when people are stressed and don't have time and energy, and they don't really have the ability or the awareness to understand the full scope of the problems they're looking at, they want to group together. They are afraid, whether they admit to it or not. They're subconsciously afraid, and so when we are afraid as human beings, we want to group together. We want to feel supported, so people want to come together, and they want to pick a winner because no one wants to be on the losing side of everything going to shit. So they look for particular things, and those things are predominantly aesthetic. The people, they favor simple slogans. They have an anger because things have gone poorly for them. They are goal-oriented because they are wanting particular fixes, and they want to believe in a vision that grabs their attention, grabs their, I suppose, provides some hope, essentially. The evidence of history is that this is what we have to address, or like most other progressive movements, we are having to survive until we get through it, which, I mean, no one wants to see. I mean, we can all see what's happening in the US at the moment. No one wants to see Australia go the same way. So if we are going to succeed in this political climate, we need to be able to capture voters who are predominantly disengaged and who will be easily convinced by solutions to problems they don't necessarily have a good grasp on, to use something like One Nation as a protest vote. And so trying to work out how to capture those particular vibes, that particular emotion, Matthew was the one who gave me the word reclaim the other week, and it felt like it just fit into a slot. Since then, a few other words have been discussed, like renew, reform, but ultimately, I personally like reclaim because it has been used by both the left and the right in just the past decade. And currently, using it as a ballot paper name would steal votes from the right-leaning populists. We have a number of ways that we can make it fit equally well with a whole range of narratives. We obviously don't ascribe to the extreme ones, but the point is it's a very flexible term. And it speaks to all of those key points, and it speaks to the current sense that we've lost something from our future. that a lot of people are feeling, particularly people who were sold the dream of home ownership, and it is becoming increasingly unlikely. And we can fit our existing policies into it quite easily. So I also circulated an example of that. I only had a day to put it together, so it's not a full policy platform. It's two areas as an example. And so I'm encouraging people to consider it. I am aware that this is a controversial tone shift. I am aware that we have generally stuck to a very educational approach, and sometimes that has been a fairly highbrow language because we want to demonstrate that we understand the problems that we're presenting solutions to, and that can sometimes be very wordy. And this shift to quite soundbitey slogans that we are stacking that we would stack our policies underneath is a dramatic tone shift, and I recognize that. But I think it works. We would have to make sure that we had some clear guidelines. So because the language would be becoming populist if we went down this route, we would have to be clear that you can't foment anger against a particular group of people, because that way is where extremist populism goes, and we can't be doing that. In particular, we certainly can't be buying into any sort of racist language, and we really should not be buying into classist language in particular. There are probably some cases where you might point at some billionaires, but broadly speaking, can't be doing this. People who are speaking would have to be trained on using the slogans, because as a party, we have spent all of our time trying to educate and explain in detail. We are not a party of people who are practiced at sloganeering, but this would have to be something that we actually drilled ourselves on. And fundamentally, we have to make sure that we are sticking to our values of honesty and transparency. So anyone who can't answer a policy question must be able to identify what area it falls into, and then be honest about not knowing all the details and be able to send people off. And that is something that takes some practice when you are doing sloganeering. It's a difficult way. It's a difficult thing to grab someone's attention and convince them that they have a plan, but also like tell them that you personally don't know the plan and to tell them to go somewhere else. And so that's a skill that is, again, something that we have to do, but will also be challenging. So keeping true to ourselves, this would be difficult. But I think we have the people who are capable of doing that. So could we actually do this, and would this actually succeed? Honestly, I don't know. But having spent a lot of time thinking about this, and having spent a lot of time talking to people over the last few years who also spent a lot of time thinking about this, this is the first approach that I think has a real chance. I think this is a very powerful possibility, particularly because we're not very far down the path in Australia. One Nation is still not very popular, and with today's news about Barnaby Joyce potentially being the person taking over it, I don't think that's changing just yet. So I think we're still in with a chance. And recently we've seen similar strategies working for similar groups in Denmark and Mexico. Mexico's current government party is a bit more left-wing, but they used a similar tactic, and they focused, much like we do, on real functional economic solutions and reform. And they are currently the governing party in Mexico and popular and got re-elected. The alternative in Denmark, similar communication strategies, also quite successful. So far, we've been doing the same thing for a while. Many other people have been. We've grown. The party has continued to grow, as I mentioned in my first address today, a constant trickle of members, but we haven't grown fast enough for the challenges of today. I believe we need to learn from Denmark, Mexico, these other examples, and try something different that fits with the actual current understanding of how people respond in these conditions politically. And that is my case for things. Thank you. I would like people to think about that. And if there's any questions, what's this? I see questions.
Well, I'll just jump in the interim. So, are we proposing to try to play off like the radical and left and right factions in politics today and try to emerge as the rational centrist type thing that can, in some respects, appeal to both factions?
Almost a radical centrist type thing.
Yeah.
Because it's ultimately, it's not about changing the substance of the policies. It's not about changing what we actually stand for. It's about
It's about the marketing of it. Yeah, I do understand, but I also understand we've always been left leaning economically, but stringently, well, more towards the libertarian side than the authoritarian side. I think just based on the chat, some of that's being challenged now. But
yeah, well, the proper libertarian, as opposed as like
as opposed to
as opposed to where the libertarians currently have gone as a party. Yes.
As in the antithesis to totalitarianism.
Yes, and actually, yes, I see it in the chat. Yes, centrist is definitely not the word, but a non-violent radical, I suppose.
Pacifist revolutionary.
Pacifist revolutionary. Yeah, I like that one.
It's really weird because all of these words keep on getting distorted. And once upon a time, if I said libertarian, people would just understand that to be the opposite of authoritarian. But now it's no longer means that because like there's this radical libertarian thing that's something else entirely.
Yeah, the libertarian word has been like distorted crazy massively.
Absolutely. If I can apologize, I've got see Bryony's got her hands up.
Oh yes.
Thanks. Yeah, I think. Well, can we steer away from the word centrism because it's come to mean Labor in the UK and Australia, which is totally beholden to corporations, as we've seen again and again. They will not do anything about the price of housing. They want to see a steady increase in its price. They are not of the people. The centre has gone so far to the right. I think we need to say we want to get rid of neoliberalism because that appeals to both sides. In fact, a lot of the left, I don't think know what neoliberalism is, but the right certainly knows.
Sorry to jump in, but Bryony, it's interesting that from your perspective, you see that the right has moved further right.
The centre has moved further right.
Yeah, well, yes, but from my perspective, it's the opposite. I think, because somebody that's been a little bit more moderately left-leaning, I've seen the left move further and further and the progressive side move further and further in that direction, and that's sort of skewed things. So I'm not sure. Look, I think the radical sides have certainly expanded on both extremes, but I don't see. I think the scales have shifted. So now what used to be a moderate left perspective has now been shifted to centre, and what used to be centrist has now been shifted to the right. Do you understand?
If we look at the Labor Party, we probably shouldn't bog down into this.
I'm sorry. I'll take full responsibility for derailing that discussion. Sorry.
Yeah. So I think for the moment, because of time, I'll ask people to sit on that and mull on that for a bit. And I'll invite Tyrone as our first guest speaker to do things in a moment. But just before Tyrone starts, Owen, I believe you have the results of the votes.
Yeah. So out of the votes that came in, so 31 votes total out of including proxies. So Drew, you got 30 votes out of 31 for president. Convener 30 votes. Oh no, sorry, it's out of 30. Yeah, sorry, everybody who voted in favor of you, Drew.
Nice.
30 votes for convener, 30 votes for secretary, 29 for treasurer. There was one person saying seek further candidates.
Miles for campaign coordinator, 29 votes. Registered officer, 30 votes. Yeah.
All right. I would like to thank everyone for their expressed confidence in this team to keep things going. All right. So leaving people to think on things. Tyrone, would you like to take it away? You are not coming through.
Sorry, I also had muted my headphones. Thanks for inviting me to speak today on behalf of WePlanet Australia. I wasn't sure what to talk about today, so I have decided on, let me just share this. If I go into presenter mode, please tell me if that works. Everyone can see.
Window, out the slides. Thanks.
Sorry, what was that?
All good.
All good. Okay, great. So I'm Tyrone D'Lisle. I'm co-founder, one of the co-founders of WePlanet Australia, which is the Australian chapter of a new global environmental movement based on eco-humanist principles. Initially started in Europe, but we've now in a number of countries in Africa, starting in Asia, and of course here in Australia. So what I wanted to speak to you today briefly is about climate solution blind spots. So we all know the obvious ones. We need to decarbonize our electricity grid. In Australia, that's primarily done by renewables. But there are a lot of other solutions and non-solutions that are kind of blind spots in the political discourse for addressing climate change in Australia. So the first one is a big one, and it elicits a lot of emotions, and it is our food system. So the way that we produce the foods that we love today is having massive negative impacts on our climate, our biodiversity, and public health. So globally, this is primarily due to animal agriculture. So globally, animal agriculture uses for grazing as well as producing the feed crops that go to feeding the animals, such as soy, etc. All that land is the equivalent of all of North and South America, and it's more than all the forests on Earth combined. So it's really a big problem. In Australia, grazing for animal agriculture is primarily the biggest use of land. All up, agriculture uses over 50% of the land mass in Australia. So that can't be used for rewilding, for example. The CSIRO came out recently and said to hit our net zero targets, we will need to rewild the equivalent of 2 times the size of Tasmania across the mainland to draw down carbon to meet our net zero goals. So the food system is a really big issue. In Australia, it accounts for 14% of our greenhouse gas emissions. The good news is there are solutions. So the key solutions are cultivated meat or cell-cultured meat. So the picture you can see there in the middle of the screen is of cultivated quail made by Dow, a company based in Sydney. They were the first cultivated meat company to get approval in Australia to sell their product, and that's their foie gras product. They also make a number of other products. And that little unassuming warehouse in an inner west suburb of Sydney is their factory, where they produce 250 kilograms of this cultivated quail product each week, which is enough to supply 16 restaurants currently across Victoria, New South Wales, and Queensland. And we just got news that another company, Gourmet, have just lodged their application with the Food Standards Australia and New Zealand for their cultivated duck, and that hopefully will go through the approval process, which took a little bit of time for Val, but is now in place. So hopefully that'll be approved by August next year, which is very exciting. So this can produce the meats and foods that we love with a fraction of the land use, fraction of the water requirements, no issues with zoonotic diseases, etc. Precision fermentation is very similar. It's again using cell culture, so you use a bacteria host or something like that to grow the cell cultures. We recently visited Solar Foods in Finland, and they're literally making protein powder out of thin air, which is incredible. They basically use hydrogen in a gas fermentation process, and they can produce a protein powder that's very nutritious, etc. They're even going to be next year, hopefully, launching this into space where they can use the respiration from the astronauts and recycled water to produce the protein powder in space. So that's very exciting. There's new genomic techniques, which is the ability for us to use CRISPR technology, which is basically like scissors that allows us to go in and essentially correct the genetic DNA code of various crops and make them more resilient to pests and drought, etc. So that allows us to produce more food on less land. And precision agriculture is using things like AI and drones. So instead of having to spray, one of the great examples of this is instead of having to spray a whole field with pesticides, you can actually use a drone or some kind of robot that goes over the field, and it uses AI to analyze which individual plants need to have pesticide applied to them. So instead of spraying a whole field, you can just do individual plants, which reduces environmental pollution, reduces the amount of chemical and synthetic inputs that we need to put in, which also reduces, energy costs and things like that, all those inputs. What do we need in Australia to get this advancing? So we need a Minister for Food and Food Innovation, because currently these new protein technologies are slipping through the cracks between industry and science minister, agriculture minister, and so what the alternative proteins industry is calling for is for a Minister for Food and Food Innovation to really drive this, and Australia is well positioned to do that. The other thing that we need is public awareness and pressure on government to act. So at the moment, government doesn't really see the food systems as a priority in addressing climate change. Another controversial one, solar geoengineering. So this would act like a potential emergency handbrake on global warming. So we would be reflecting sunlight back into space to reduce the amount of heat coming in and being trapped in our atmosphere. The funny thing is, well, funny and also terrible, is that we've been unintentionally doing solar geoengineering through burning of fossil fuels, by putting sulfates into the air, and also the release of greenhouse gas emissions, which are trapping heat, etc. So, and those are what the main drivers of climate change is. But when you start talking about the intentional use of geoengineering, it becomes a whole another ball game. We already have conspiracy theories that there's, the government using lasers to make hurricanes and all kinds of weird things. But also amongst traditional environmentalists, it's got this whole perceived, unnatural appeal of humans messing with nature kind of thing. So at the moment, there's a big push to ban it internationally, including the research of it. And whilst that would be really detrimental, because whilst the phenomenon is well understood, so for example, volcanoes releasing a lot of particles into the stratosphere, reflects a lot of sunlight away, and we get dips in temperature, most notably at the start of the 19th century, there was a volcano which led to a couple of years where the global climate reduced a few degrees and actually caused harvests to fail and things like that. But the actual mechanism of how we would deploy those in the stratosphere is not entirely clear. So we would need to do research to better understand those mechanisms and potential consequences. So what we're arguing for at WePlanet at the moment is that whilst we're not currently pushing to rush to deploy solar geoengineering, we're saying that we need to at least be researching this so that if we get to a point, and it's very likely that we will, because as we're reducing fossil fuels, we're actually reducing the amount of sulfates in the air which are reflecting this sunlight back. So that unintentional solar geoengineering is starting to come back as we reduce burning fossil fuels, and we're starting to see warming accelerate because the warming that it was masking is now coming through, and this is what's called termination shock. So one of the risks for using solar geoengineering is if we start doing it, we have to keep doing it until we manage to stabilize the climate by pulling more CO2 and other emissions out of the air. But at the moment, we're already seeing this termination shock by the stopping of burning of fossil fuels. So it's a very tricky one. It's very likely that we're going to have to do this eventually. So we need to be researching it and starting to prepare the public for understanding, public and government for understanding how this works. Another blind spot is hydrogen. So in Australia, there's lots of investment and talk about us being a green hydrogen super economy, superpower, I think is the word they love using the most. The problem is it's likely never going to happen. Right now, you can produce hydrogen for around $1 a ton. I think Michael Liebrock talks about it, $1 a ton. But to produce green hydrogen, it's like between 6 and 12. And basically the physics of hydrogen mean that the economics will never really stack up. Even if you have the best sunlight and the cheapest electrolyzers, you just can't make the economics stack up. So basically we need to be using hydrogen sparingly for the things where there's no real alternative. So we don't want to be putting it in boats. We don't want to be putting it in cars and other things like that. We want to be using electricity for this. So Michael Liebreich has his hydrogen ladder here. And basically the government in Australia needs to stop pouring billions of dollars into trying to make this happen. It's just not going to happen. That money could be better invested in, say, putting solar and batteries on renters in rental properties to help bring down the cost of living for renters. And other climate solutions around the country. So that's a big one that we're kind of going to start bringing up and one to be aware of. This is my last climate blind spot, nuclear energy. So this is a picture of Olkiluoto nuclear power station in Finland, which again, we got to visit recently when we went to Finland for the WePlanet 10-year celebration. And it's just a gorgeous power station painted in this beautiful terracotta, surrounded by nature on this very small land footprint. Gorgeous power station. They have great public tours. I encourage you, if you're ever in Finland, to go visit. But why nuclear energy? It offers key climate and societal benefits. Unfortunately, it is banned in Australia under federal law and in the states of Queensland, New South Wales, and Victoria. Those bans are for political reasons. There's no scientific evidence underpinning those bans, and they really need to be repealed. Even if you think Australia doesn't need to use nuclear energy right now, it's something that we should be at least considering and exploring. So, for instance, AEMO, the Australian Energy Market Operator, doesn't even consider nuclear in their scenarios when they're looking at what is the best path forward for Australia's decarbonisation efforts. They in their integrated system plans, they very transparent and specific about this in their executive summary at the top. We do not include nuclear energy because it is illegal. So let's lift the ban and allow our experts to at least consider it. The benefits are that it's very low land use. In fact, it's the lowest land use. So for every megawatt hour produced, it requires just 0.3 square meters. Very low life cycle emissions. So as you can see here, it's actually the lowest life cycle emissions, just 6 tons of greenhouse gas emissions per gigawatt hour. It's actually lower than wind and solar. Wind and solar will come down as we decarbonise our grid and the manufacturing of those products becomes cleaner, but at the moment nuclear is the cleanest. Other life cycle analysis has found that it has the lowest environmental impact overall. That includes from the manufacturing of it, releasing toxic materials into the environment, etc. The power stations themselves, whilst expensive to build, they do have an 80+ year lifespan, and they provide a consistently low cost electricity and energy whilst over their life span, because they can produce at a steady constant rate. They can also load follow, which they do in countries all around the world, but they can offer that consistent steady price of electricity. They also provide process heating for industry, so a lot of industrial tasks at the moment use fossil fuels for heat generation. Nuclear can offer heat for that as well, including desalination and hydrogen production, but making it more efficient at higher temperatures. And that is it. Final word is that we need to think beyond elections. Elections are crucial, and as you guys would know, as a political party, that is kind of your bread and butter. But the policy space is shaped between elections and requires active participation to achieve desired outcomes. So I really encourage everyone, either through Fusion itself or participating in that broader civil society groups, to campaign on the issues, maybe some of these issues, to help shape the policy agenda going into elections, because that will make it easier to argue for your particular position come election. And that's it.
Thank you, Tyrone. If anyone has any burning questions, we can allow 1 or 2 questions before we move on to our next speaker. Adrian?
Hi. This is more of a economical proposal, I guess, and a question. Because nuclear energy is so ridiculously expensive to set up in the first place, but it's cheaper to run than coal and gas. What my proposal or question is, couldn't we at first make the uranium or refinement in-house first, and then later on, after like 10 or so years, we make the power plant afterwards, so we can at least reap some of the economic benefits of refining than selling it to a country like France?
I'm not sure who that was directed at. Is that a Fusion Party question or to me?
To you, sorry, to you.
Yes. Moving up the fuel supply chain, value chain, is definitely an option for Australia. There is some concerns around that because there's a nuclear non-proliferation treaty, and basically they want to avoid how many countries are producing this enriched uranium. It's nowhere near a bomb. For a bomb, you need like 92+% of enrichment. Most nuclear power stations around the world, their fuel is only enriched to like around 4 to 6%, which actually makes them really inefficient in terms of the burn up of their fuel. And you can actually, that's why you can take the fuel that has been in a reactor for 3 to 5 years and actually reprocess it and recycle it. And if you put in a new type of reactor, like a breeder reactor, you can actually, we've done the calculations at WePlanet, just taking the UK, for example, if you took all the used fuel sitting around in the UK and you ran it, reprocessed it and used it in a breeder reactor, you could power the UK at current electricity demand for over 1,000 years. So they're things that we should be considering. What you choose to do as a party is really up to you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that, Adrian, for that question, and thank you again, Tyrone. We have a quick question if you can send through the links to the slides and things like that at some point, or
yep, I can do that.
That would be greatly appreciated. All right, and on that note, I would like to introduce our second guest speaker for today. This is the Honourable Tammy Franks, who is a current member of the Legislative Council of South Australia.
I'm just trying to work out how to turn my video on. You can hear me though, right?
We can hear you, yes, thank you.
How do I've lost my video, hang on. Oh, well, I don't know. There we go, thank you. Very good, thanks for the prompt, Drew. Hi, my name's Tammy Franks. Drew's actually asked me to join you today as somebody he's had a chat with recently in South Australia in state parliament. I am a new independent in the state upper house. My history and my experience is very much one of third parties, and it goes back to the 1990s through to today. I'm in my late 50s now, so starting in student days back in the 1990s, where I was involved first in the student politics and then the Democrats. I worked for Senator Natasha Stott-Despoja as her youth advisor and her higher education advisor back in the 90s. I was her first staffer. And back then the Democrats existed in South Australia, but the Greens didn't. As many of you might be aware from history or experience, the Democrats imploded in the early 2000s, really. And they limped on for quite a while, but there was a massive implosion. Once I wasn't working for Natasha anymore, went off to the non-government sector, worked for Amnesty International, the YWCA, organisations like the Mental Health Coalition as in policy. But then after the Tampa, decided to get back in the game of capital P politics and joined the Greens in around about 2006, maybe 5. From there, in 2010, I've held a position in the upper house for the Greens for almost 15 years before going independent through a bit of a massive internal Barney in reality late last year. Drew's just asked me to talk about the experience of, or reflections on the state of democracy. No small thing, really. I think democracy is literally in peril. Being in the belly of the beast in a parliament, I can see it withering on the vine. Our institutions are under attack. We've had academia eroded, the freedom of academia. Really, people are fearful of speaking up or losing funding or those sorts of things. And under the Howard era, of course, that was quite a deliberate policy of cutting back research institutions. And now, more recently, we've really lost the fourth estate. Journalism is not what it used to be. It's quite depressing at times when media, who we would look to ensure politicians are kept honest, to ensure politics is a conversation that we're all included in, and that is truth-based, science-based, rational, reasonable, and reflective of respect for diversity of opinion is really being, and I absolutely agree. I was going to say 6 News is actually one of the best media sources. It's interesting that places like also the Adelaide Mail, which is a satirical site here in South Australia, actually find it far more useful and erudite and insightful than the mainstream media. But I don't blame the journalists. In fact, I often feel for the journalists in this system. They are increasingly being cut to the bone, silenced either, through threats of defamation or, in Daily here in South Australia as an independent media outlet set up to be an alternative to what is our one Murdoch paper town. But In Daily is fearful of being sued. And so often they will have to cut a story and without the cover of parliamentary privilege, for example. They simply can't run stories that they would like to and that they should be running. They simply haven't got the money, however, to fight large legal cases. And we know from the ABC's experience, and while the ABC's just cut here, the ABC is also really gun shy at the moment of running stories because of the series of actions that have been taken against them. Not only their own friendly fire that they've done to themselves, but certainly they're very fearful of pushing the boundaries in the way that when I first started being involved in politics in the 90s and the 2000s, they would have easily taken on and fought. So these are pretty dire times. And here in South Australia, we've got a really clever Labor government that's part of the, the Labor Liberal LNP interstate, but it's just Liberals here in SA, the duopoly. We have our great old duopolies right across most industries in Australia. We've got Coles and Woolies, we've got Qantas and Virgin, and we've got, of course, Labor and Liberal. In South Australia, the Labor Party is literally the most successful enterprise of a Labor operation. They operate through something called the machine, where the left and the right faction years and years ago, decades ago now, set up a deal where they carved up the seats, created, almost like a peace agreement, and that machine keeps anybody who's not factionalised out and means that you've got this absolute Borg of an operation. That machine also, though, as it came to government this time with Peter Malinauskas, who, at least by a mystery poll that, I would guess was probably commissioned by a Labor-affiliated union, earlier this year was cited as the most popular premier in the country. They picked off all the really good journos when they came back into power in 2022. Tom Richardson, who'd worked for Channel 9 previously, and then the online publication In Daily, who knows where the bodies are buried. He now works for the Treasurer, who was the Minister for Transport. Nick Harmson, who was the head of the ABC here in South Australia in terms of the news desk, he now works for the Premier. The major investigative reporter, Michael Maguire, who used to do the deep investigations for The Advertiser, now works for another Labor minister. And I could go on and on with the number of journos that they've literally picked off. The ones who actually know, as I say, where the body's buried, have been co-opted by the government of the day. So we've got 1 or 2 journos left who know history and can call out BS when they see and hear it. But we're very much in post-truth politics, not just in Australia, but here in South Australia as well. Even though this has been the home of, the Australian Democrats, it was a stronghold here, along with Queensland. Historically, it's been a great place for third parties like that of Nick Xenophon to flourish. And it's actually a place where we don't just have Coles and Woolies, we actually have Foodlands and IGAs at almost at a third of the rate as well. I think that in terms of the separation of church and state as well, the former Liberal leader here in South Australia was recorded at a church in somewhere near his electorate just saying, separation of church and state, just forget it. We've seen the entry of what I used to call and what was called the Exclusive Brethren, who's now the Plymouth Brethren Church, really go from a position of not getting involved in politics at all because they weren't engaged in worldly things, to being on polling booths come by-elections and elections, handing out for usually Conservative forces, but it actually can go either way again here in South Australia as well. The religious right has actually had quite strong hooks into the Labor right in this state for a very long time, but now we've got the more evangelical churches with their hooks into what is the Liberal Party here now, which has become far more conservative than it's ever been. Historically, we were the home of the Liberal movement, again, which had some similarities with the Democrats, and had people who were really quite progressive, who led reform, and who had great pride in having conscience votes and not doing what they were told. Yeah, so I'm a bit depressed, Drew. Thanks for making me go through that. It was really excellent to listen to your conversation earlier, though. I've been reflecting on what I would say to you, and I've heard it a billion times, and sometimes it makes me cringe, but I'm going to say it again. Never think that a small group of people can't change the world, because in fact it is exactly what always changes the world. You know, whether it's the group of Friends of Palestine who gathered last night to listen to Chris Hedges, who's of course been banned from the National Press Club, but they gathered in their many hundreds, both online and in the room, to hear what he had to say. To this morning, I've just spent my morning with a group down at what's called the Tennyson Dunes Conservation Park here in South Australia, and it's a whole range of groups that get together to preserve and protect the environment, to do good for their community and to come together. That sort of activity does give you hope, and people want hope when they vote. And we know, if you go back to the 90s, and I'll sum up here, when I was looking at joining a political party, I did something very different to my politically active friends. They joined the Labor Party by and large. Some of them joined the Liberals, but I always was a third party person, because I always went, I don't hear my voice in these conversations. I don't hear my reality reflected. And I think democracy is a conversation. Increasingly, Australians aren't voting for Labor or Liberal. They are moving away. It's just where they move to and how they get there and what attracts them and what gives them the feeling that their vote is not just powerful, but is reflective of their values, is incredibly important. Words are key to that. So I look with great interest to the way Fusion goes with that conversation as well. But I'm heartened by the fact that, for example, One Nation voters in Queensland could be flipped to the Greens through conversations about what they really cared about. And it wasn't that they wanted to be racist. They were fed up with being ignored. They were feeling shafted in their lives. They were responding to lack of opportunity, feeling like they're going backwards, and that their children or those in the next generation weren't going to have it as good as they did. That anger can be harnessed in different ways. It can be harnessed in a way that brings unity and hope, or it can be harnessed, as we've seen at the moment, in a race to the bottom of racism and division and othering of people. Now, with the churches getting involved and with a lack of proper media, I do fear that Australia could go that way. But our political system fundamentally doesn't reward those who seek to divide us, because we have to go and at least cross our names off that roll. It's not a situation of getting out the vote and motivating people out of, religious fervour or racist anger to go to the polling booths. Everyone's expected to fill in that ballot form, whether they do or not, but they at least need to sign their names off. So we do have that opportunity and that strength with our preferential system as well here, that we don't have to go that way. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you do. The words in these conversations and the values that are expressed. I think lots of Australians are looking for something that they're not hearing right now, and I've certainly put Fusion in my top 3 before. I was a little unsure exactly who you were at the last federal election, but it made sense. I've long supported the Pirate Party and the Science Party and the Secular Party, and was well aware of those histories. I think you've just now got the challenge ahead of you of helping people find a home with you. So that's me, I guess.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming and speaking with us, Tammy. This is a rare privilege for us, so appreciate it. Are you able to stick around for any questions for a little while?
Yeah, I am. And what I was going to say, I do make the offer as well. If you've got candidates running, and I know that, you were discussing before how you communicate things, I'm very happy to help people who are, for want, it's not the word, but I'll use it right now, the progressive forces, people who are there, to bring us together rather than divide us. I'm very happy to help anyone who's independent or in minor parties navigate that communication and political system in that way. So feel free to reach out on that.
Fantastic. Are there any questions for Tammy here?
I have a question. Tammy, that was just absolutely fabulous. Thank you for sharing so much about your background. And just because we are a small party trying to make a big difference, given your experience with Democrats and with Greens in the past and considering where you are now, what do you think would be some good advice for a party? What to avoid or what to embrace? Any handy hints would be appreciated.
I know Drew mentioned that you've got a really reasonably extensive grievance and conflict resolution process. That's always very good. I think you've got to make sure that you've got proper processes that can't be weaponised. And I know that that's the boring stuff, because what you want to do is talk about policy, but you can't talk about policy in a really safe way unless you have that fundamental, and not to be scared of having a diversity of opinions as well. I think that, respecting that and even encouraging that, like encouraging somebody, not, necessarily to be devil's advocate, but to think through, what are the different opinions and why people hold them. I've really learnt that in Parliament, to actually find out why somebody thinks what they think. And sometimes the reasons that they hold a position really surprise you, and you can then understand where they're coming from. So to keep, a solid foundation, I think you have to have that respect for the conversation and for fleshing things out. It's very hard to do that sort of stuff online, by the way, but there are ways and means.
That's great. Thanks, Tammy.
Adrian, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, just this is more of a question about what happened recently this year. What's your opinion on the policy that was made in South Australia about how political donations are no longer counted from corporations or unions in South Australia?
Yeah, I think it's got a sting in the tail. I think that the Malinauskas government has put something up that's possibly a bit of a poison chalice. We'll see what happens with the election, whether or not independents and minors can actually compete. I think it's been sold as something, to be honest, I think it's been sold as something it's not. And I know that the Rest is Politics UK has lauded Premier Malinauskas for his great leadership. But people are already struggling who aren't in the system to navigate the system. The first time round is always incredibly complicated, but it actually does seem to shut people and shut new starters or small players out in a way that's never existed before. And a lot of spin is what I would say. I'm not convinced, but I wasn't the one negotiating that particular issue at the time. But the reality is I did punish the Greens by leaving them because they lost some money that went along with me, not just my tithe, but the fact of me leaving them, robbed them of some money that they would have otherwise been able to access. However, it's still money that they can access across the board in the lower house seats anyway.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions for Tammy at the moment? I think we've all been sitting here a while, so
You have.
and it can be a bit difficult to think of a question on the spot. So thank you very much,
No.
Tammy, for your time. This was incredible.
Yep, and feel free to reach out. I love chatting with Drew about the party and where it's going. I want people to vote for. And I know I'm not alone.
Awesome. All righty.
All right, I'll see you guys.
Thank you.
All right, see you, Tammy. Thank you.
We're not backtracking.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Group. The decision has been made.
Is that the last of the formal business we have?
So at the moment, that is sorry, when I can find the right thing. Here we go. So that is effectively the last of the real formal business, unless anybody would like to raise a motion. Personally, I wouldn't mind there being a motion on some things, but go on.
Oh, I'd love to say a couple of words about the Victorian estate registration campaign.
Yes,
just quickly.
Go on.
Great. Yeah. Well, as I mentioned earlier, so it's been announced. We put it out across social media and have put in mail out to members as well. So if you're in Victoria, that's incredibly exciting. I really encourage you to check out the campaign. Get in touch with myself or one of our other candidates about where we're at, and get involved, because we do need to start getting people more visible in the community. But if you're not in Victoria, then there are still heaps of ways we do need your help getting involved. So we need volunteers remotely to support with communications and social media, with graphic design, support with policy writing and research, and to support with party engagement as well. And this is an incredibly exciting milestone for the party to go for Victorian state party registration, and it's looking far more achievable than ever before. So some of you may be aware that we did previously go attempt this in 2022. We fell short by a margin of roughly 30%. Which was very close at the time. But with that experience and with the advice of multiple other minor parties that have made this attempt, and significantly more members this time, we are far more confident about our likelihood of success. And as mentioned in the mail out comms, we're at somewhere north of 200% of the member requirement, which is a very, very high safety margin. And so now it's just a matter of getting a few more members to sort of boost us over the line. So if anyone has friends in Victoria, or if you are in Victoria, my big ask is really to talk to your friends about Fusion Party, about our vision for the planet, for the country, and for the state, and say that this is our chance now to actually work together in this new hopeful movement, one which listens to evidence, one which listens to science and technology, one which gets nurses and doctors and engineers into government, or aims to do so as a high priority. Then this is the time that we need to be talking to our friends and family. So thank you so much for hearing me out there. And if you do want to jump in and volunteer for the campaign, remotely or in person, please jump on the website, sign up on the volunteer page. But if you're in Victoria, especially if you're in Melbourne, please get in touch with myself and how we can help out on the ground.
Thank you, Miles. And thank you all.
Thank you very much, Miles. If at this time anyone would like to make any formal points on the matter of campaign strategy, now is the time to do it. Otherwise, we'll close the formal business and we'll just leave the room open for general discussion. I, as chair, cannot make motions. Adrian, you've got your hand up again.
Yeah, I decided to participate a bit more this time. What I have more is a potential idea of how we can get voters from both sides of the aisle to support us, I guess. The idea is that you get a generalized position on something, such as less, I don't know, like like getting rid of coal plants, like that, and to frame it from what obviously the more One Nation and liberal side people say is that they'll say it's going to cost too much and there's too much land space, and obviously the more green side would say they love it in general. What you could possibly do is that you could instead frame it, instead of it being a whole for the Greens, you can obviously still frame it as a less CO2 for the environment, but for obviously the liberals and nationals and all and on that side of the aisle, you can frame it as a better cost cutting message, and also by using it to by just saying it as a quality of life increase, because it's cleaner air and you're not breathing in fumes from coal. Just as an example of how you can framing the issue on two different ways, as both are true. It's just that the message you're sending to each person is what you're focusing on is different.
Yes, I think that's the sort of thing that works all right in a conversation. I'm not sure that I think the reality is that when you're talking about things like website presented information, you essentially do need to have a single way of communicating something that is sufficiently effective to get people's attention, one way or another. And that's where the challenge in capturing things capturing things succinctly and accurately enough comes in.
If I can jump in here, that idea of resonating across the aisle is great, and I think pretty much everyone in the party would be on board with that one. It is like we've all said, how you frame it, and at the end of the day, the research that I've done into messaging is to lead with values. You can lead with conservative values or you can lead with progressive values, but lead with values. Things like security, family, stability, those sort of things. That's how you get that across the aisle resonance.
Okay, I see. I suppose it was more of just an idea than a proposal, I suppose.
Fair enough. Owen, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you for everyone for supporting me during my time on the executive, and thank you to my fellow executives for all the time you guys committed. And I think Fusion's in a strong position at the end of this year. Yeah, it's a shame even though I'm not recontesting to stay on the executive, I still very much support Fusion. And yeah, I'd just like to spend more time on working on the podcasts, my first party. I think that's already shown positive signs that it's helpful for Fusion's cause. And in the relevance to this current debate, maybe we should reframe these policies or whatever. I used to have the view that if only people heard Fusion's ideas, then they'd see how fantastic these ideas were and they would vote for us. I no longer believe that to be true. Especially in my own campaign, I spent 20K, mainly on ads. Everybody in Brunswick, in Wills could see, that I was running and the dot points. But I think we really need more presence in the zeitgeist. We need to have more of a personable profile, not just a party that theoretically exists with some theoretical positions. Yeah, we need a much more personality, a human face. And so I'm not saying I'm the best person to do this, but someone has to. So yeah, if anyone else wants to help increase Fusion's visibility in the public sphere, I really encourage you. There's yeah, we touched on this before. Like, we really need people to step forward and do this for Fusion. Yeah. So thanks, everyone.
And actually, on that point, we now have a whole network of contacts in various organizations that run regular events. For example, there's the South Australian Grassroots Ecosystem in SA, in Adelaide, that runs monthly events. And now that I've said that, I can't remember a whole bunch of them off the top of my head, but we know we have like contact with all of these different people in all of these different states who run things. And a bigger challenge that we have is that we don't have presence there. We have no one to actually show up and represent us, because those of us who are doing a lot of the organizing don't have the time to show up because we're doing the organizing. So there's a big space for people who are part of the party who just want to show up to events where other like-minded people are, but wear a party shirt and be willing to answer some questions about the party if it comes up, and just engage with people. That's what we need. We need people who are just willing to go to things and not be shy about being part of Fusion. So if anyone needs a shirt or wants to do that, or wants to get in contact, please, we'll hook you up. All right.
If I could just jump in with some big ideas of my own. Not a proposal by any stretch of the imagination, but I have been thinking about ways that we could completely differentiate ourselves. So I pitched it the other day. I don't remember which channel I put it in, about open source politics and the Steal Our Platform sort of positioning. So earlier in the meeting, Miles did say something towards that effect, that we have the capacity for greater change regardless of whether we're in power or not. And I thought there was potentially something that we could do to weaponize that in basically putting our policies, our methodologies, everything out in the public for everyone to see, and also just straight up telling people, implement our policies, like take our stuff, do like bring out, like do implement our policies, because we don't care about whether we win, we just want it to be fixed. I thought it was something that would be, it's something that I'm still thinking about, very early thoughts in my brain, but if it was something that we could explore, that would be cool. And I think it'd be something that'd be a massive differentiator.
I'm not quite sure I caught all of that.
Essentially, put everything out in the open, all of our evidence, all of our policies. I know we've already got our policies, but like the full policy detail, and allow members of the public to contribute to our policies in terms of like through, like, for example, if we were on GitHub or something, like through like commits and pull requests and things like that. Allow people to fork our policies, that sort of thing. Like literally just like present our policies as if they were like open source software, that the implementation matters more than who's implementing it.
Right. Yes. I think we've had a few conversations about that sort similar things in the past. For example, I know the Pirates have a policy wiki which has extensive citations and things like that. Obviously, they don't make changes except through their major meetings, but those things are sort of submitted from all over the place, as I understand it. I think the challenge that we have there is then the technical side of connecting that and presenting that in a functional way on the website. Like I think there's a bunch of technical work there required to make that smooth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which, I mean, look, if someone wants to work on it, that would be fantastic. But I think, yeah, we've got some hurdles to overcome there. We've got
Absolutely.
hurdles to overcome just with what we're already trying to do. So, yeah.
It's just food for thought. It's not anything that I'm saying we need to do or anything like that. It's just some food for thought.
Alex Jaeger, who was here earlier, has talked to me somewhat about policy wikis and things like that in the past. I think we'll have to get you guys into a conversation because we've talked about doing some stuff that we just haven't been able to do yet. So if you're interested, yeah, we should put that together.
Yeah, absolutely. I think consolidating all of our public-facing documents into one place is probably going to be a big thing to help us.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. Are there any final matters that someone wants to raise, or shall we close the recording? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Going once, going twice. All right. Thank you, everyone. This obviously ran later and longer than expected, so thank you, everyone, for sticking around and bearing with the challenges we had at the start. I will now close the AGM and let you all decide whether or not you're hanging around for a discussion. So thank you all and happy Sunday.
Okay.